Can refusing to repay a loan cost someone $500,000? Several years ago, shortly after my divorce, I met someone who seemed like everything I had been missing for a long time. My former husband, Harley, had always been practical and focused on responsibilities. Although he was a decent person, I often felt lonely during our marriage, and eventually I decided to move on. Not long after, I met Eric Lawson in the city of Willow Creek. He was charming, emotional, and very affectionate. From the very beginning, he made me feel important. On our first date, people even assumed we had been together for years because of how comfortable and close he seemed with me. Compared to my previous relationship, it felt like a dream. Eric lived a flashy lifestyle. He owned a beautiful home, drove expensive vehicles, and claimed he operated a car wash business along with a marketing company. Everything about him suggested success, so I never questioned where his money came from. After nearly a year together, he asked me and my son to move in with him. He even prepared a bedroom for my child before I had made a decision. Although I still kept my own home, I began spending more time at his place. That was when I started noticing things that seemed unusual. He would stay awake throughout the night and sleep during the day. I occasionally overheard phone calls that sounded strange and didn't match the businesses he described. Sometimes he would speak harshly to people and demand payments, which confused me. Still, I trusted him and ignored the warning signs. Eventually, Eric told me he was facing temporary financial problems. According to him, some important customers were behind on payments, and he was struggling to cover expenses. Wanting to help someone I cared deeply about, I agreed to lend him $25,000. That money was extremely important to me. It represented nearly 10 years of savings, and included funds I had set aside for retirement and my son's future. Accessing it even required paying penalties, but I believed I would have it back quickly, because Eric promised to repay everything within 3 weeks. Unfortunately, things fell apart before those 3 weeks were over. One evening, while meeting friends for drinks, I unexpectedly saw Eric with another woman. There was no misunderstanding. It was obvious they were together. I didn't confront him or cause a scene. Instead, I quietly went to his house, packed my belongings, and left. Despite everything, I still expected him to honor his promise and return my money. That never happened. Soon after, someone who knew Eric told me that I had made the right decision by leaving. He shared information that shocked me. I later learned that many of the stories Eric had told me about his business and finances were far from the truth. At first, I found it hard to believe, but as I thought back to the strange conversations I had overheard during the previous year, everything began to make much more sense. I tried many times to recover my money peacefully, but nothing worked. Thankfully, I had written him a check and clearly noted that it was a loan. That small decision would later become very important. As time passed, I gathered records, documents, and information that helped me understand how much of his story had been fabricated. I reported everything I discovered to the proper authorities and eventually took him to court. The legal process moved slowly, but after several years, I won my case. Eric didn't even bother showing up, and the court ordered him to repay the $25,000 along with additional costs. Although I still haven't received a single dollar, the story didn't end there. Investigators later began examining his finances much more closely. What they discovered went far beyond the issues involving me. His accounts were frozen, his debts grew rapidly, and eventually he lost the luxurious home he had once proudly shown off. Friends later told me that the financial damage reached hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the time he reached his 40s, he had moved back in with his parents and was struggling to rebuild his life. Recently, I learned that he had found a new job, and I began exploring ways to continue collecting the money that the court had awarded me. But the most unbelievable part came when I received a message from him out of nowhere. Eric told me that he missed me. He said I had been an angel in his life and admitted that he regretted the choices he had made. Reading those words after everything that had happened was almost impossible to believe. Looking back now, I realized that refusing to repay $25,000 ended up costing him far more than he ever imagined.